Hey guys, this will be video 9 for the how to design build a 58 Explorer replica, sometimes using Stuart McDonald templates. But I'm gonna jump right out of the gate here and talk about the balance of the guitar, and then we're gonna weigh it. Got the neck in a few nights ago, and everything's trimmed up, and it's turning into a guitar. I'm extremely happy with it, and I don't know if it's in the camera. Yeah, my left hand is kind of controlling the body from tipping to the right or tipping to the left. And what I have is I have an architect's or an engineer's scale, a triangle up under the guitar. And I'll only cover this briefly right now because the guitar is not finished, so it's not perfectly balanced yet. But once this guitar design is finished, whether it's, I don't know about the actual Explorers, but I'm sure they probably are. But all of the replicas that I have built, they've turned out pretty much perfectly balanced right down the center of the guitar, right down the center of the neck. They almost float. It's really amazing. Now, obviously, this one doesn't have the electronics in it. It doesn't have the pick guard on. The pickups don't really matter because they're right down the center, nor does the fretboard because of the actual, weight of the fretboard is just right in the middle, more or less. But once you got the tuners on it and all that jazz, you got a few tuners off to the treble side, it ends up being a really incredibly well-balanced guitar right down the center. Now, and I'll only cover this briefly, but I know in all the pictures of the 58 guitars that I saw that were vintage correct, the strap button was basically, if you drew a straight edge from the low E tuner location through the the strap button location right here, which is where all of them are that I have seen. But if you drew a line between that strap button location and the low E tuner, it would create a location right out here. And that's roughly where I saw all the strap buttons on all the vintage guitars. I did notice that the 76 did have a strap button closer to the middle, if not right on the middle, or maybe it was an optical illusion. It was in the middle between this point here and this point here. Maybe it was just in the middle there, but which is like 3/4 of an inch off the center line of the body of the guitar. Where I'm going with this is the 81 Explorer that I built for Eric. He moved the strap button location behind the headstock, the heel location right there, basically right on the center, and then he put the strap button on the center. And he said he liked the feel of that a lot better. So with that said, so I say that to say this: I'm kind of indifferent about it right now. But I know on all of the ones that I've built, I've always put the strap button in this location right here and roughly in this location right here. We're not there yet on this guitar as far as Ed's guitar, but it's definitely, I'm going to allow Ed to make that call if he prefers it a certain way. But I only brought that up because I'm talking about weight and balance right now. And so we'll cover that again before the guitar is finished, of course. That basically will be the very last thing I typically always do on a build is install the strap buttons. But right now, I have a engineer's scale, or the triangle, architect's scale, triangle, whatever you want to call it. It's basically in that location right there. And as you can see, the guitar is almost perfectly balanced. So once it gets loaded up, with your electronics and some stuff over here and this, and I'm going to offset it just a little bit with like the tuners. I got a feeling probably what's going to happen is the scale will then be able to move to the center, and we're going to discover that just like all the others that I've built, that we're going to have a perfectly balanced guitar. And then whether Ed elects to put the strap button spot on center here or up here in the 58 location, it's totally his call. And then And then basically, every picture I've seen, they're always installed in this location right here. But again, I'm going to hold off on that stuff. But if you're building this guitar, uh, be careful about replicas or copies of this guitar. If they have the strap button in this location here or behind the back, uh, I'm a little fearful that if your strap button is on the back and then in the center, it's going to start doing the whole SG thing where it starts trying to roll forward on you. So anyway, I'm going to stop because I don't want to start talking about that type of stuff because it's so hypothetical. But we need to put a lot of thought into that. But I've never once seen Gibson install their strap button in this location on the back of the guitar because it's behind the center of the guitar, and you're definitely going to have a tendency for it to roll forward. Uh, Especially the further you move the strap button down to the center. That might be what someone wants, but it's not what I would want on my guitars. Okay, with that said, again, I'm indifferent, 100% indifferent, but if it were my guitar, I would be putting the strap buttons, in their truly historical locations up here. Okay, so what have I done since the last video? Got all this shaped, sanded, and flushed out on the back. Very happy with that. It's turning out really good. Not sure what you can see, but we've already done a flyby. Nothing has really taken place up here at all, other than just a little bit of minimal sanding. I'm still about 1 millimeter away from the final finished guitar on the neck, on the thickness of the neck, and nothing has changed, up here, other than I did go ahead and verify the thickness of this top is in fact now machined down to 7/16 of an inch thick, and that will allow it to receive the really long 1 3/4 inch. The 3/4 inch long potentiometers. So what does that equate to? A ton of tone and a ton of strength. So you don't have any risk of the top cracking or anything. It would have to take a really horrific blow for that to break loose. But all the binding has been scraped flush with the top. Haven't measured it, but it's well over a quarter, but it is definitely under 5/16 of an inch thick. And what is that? Just historically accurate, per 50s. I'm sorry, per like the 50s Les Paul. And what else would they put binding on? I don't know. They're big body guitars. But nonetheless, it's vintage correct, and it's really beautiful because it's not chintzy at all. It's got just really, and it's kind of interesting how you can still pull that off on a relatively thin body at 1 1/2 inch thick. I just think from a scale standpoint, it's really beautiful. Got the output jack location drilled, ready to receive that. So coming together, and I came really close, Ed, to, I spent a lot of time laying this out and looking at it, assessing it, determining it, thinking about it, going in from the backside. But I think, because I saw some early pictures in the video where I was showing this guitar, where I had a couple of the nitrocellulose coats of lacquer on the guitar, and I was forgetting that I had done a join there. And right down here, it's matching up so well. I think it's going to be better to just leave it exactly like it is. Well, it's done now because I've already cut through the front, but I don't think it's necessary to cut through the back in order to try to conceal any unsightly glue lines. Okay, so with that said, we're going back to our very original game plan of just going in from the front. And the cool thing about this is it's machined right up to the original pocket location. However, I stopped it about, I could have machined this back about another 3/8 of an inch if I wanted to, but I only did this in order to allow, I don't know, I wish I had one. I wish I had the L-shaped three-way, where obviously the three-way is going to be further, it's going to be about in that location right there. But if in the event in the future you ever wanted to change that, that could be rotated and rewired and all that jazz, and it could be moved up here. But I just think from a historical standpoint, Ed and I both agreed that, yeah, let's just keep it all per specs. But there's room in there, quite frankly. You could even do addition. You could route out as much as you wanted up here and add additional electronics, but it would start looking kind of silly and out of place with this design. Okay, and I went ahead and just engineered because see, once I had the guitar defined here, well, let me back up. Once I had the guitar defined by this joint right here, that's the 19th fret. I knew every bit of that. I was not going to deviate that because everything about my templates, you name it, designs from that location right there, from the neck to body join, that being the 19th fret location, it defined that location right there for the scale of the guitar, and then which then defined the location for the tailpiece back here, and then the pitch. See, this one is, I'm going to exaggerate. It's pitched back. It's pitched back like that right there per 58 specs, but and that will allow your very narrow 58 specs bridge to be put on. You don't have to have a real wide bridge to accommodate for the saddles, making all the aggressive pitch. But once I knew this was defined, and I had really driven home the fact that I was going with a certain scale guitar, which was the 24.625. I may have called it a 24.562 in some of the early videos, but that was inaccurate and just me transposing numbers. But it's the true Gibson scale of 24.625, which they call the 24 3/4, but it's about 1/8 of an inch shorter overall. But what that did is once I had that location there, the scale length, that defined exactly where the fretboard was going to end and whether the fretboard had binding or not, which it does. And then what is the thickness of that binding? Well, it's 60 thousandths, and I'll shape it down slightly less. So that defined the actual P90 location. And I went ahead and triple checked all of this location right here. Excuse me, Ed. Excuse me, Ed. But and I'm meaning Ed, for your interest, I did move this forward about 3/16 of an inch max. And it's pretty cool. The more I looked at it, I used to, I made several statements. Oh, it's probably closer to 3/8 of an inch. It wasn't that much further forward in the late 60s, but it's about 3/16 of an inch further in that direction towards the neck than the very early 52, like the old early P90 Les Paul, which was very close to the bridge. And what it boils down to is, well, they changed it in 68. In 68, they moved the neck pickup a little bit further forward, and I had made the assumption that it was probably because, in the early 50s, they were probably going head-to-head with Fender, trying to compete with the Telecaster and prove that they could, create a twangy country-sounding guitar, only to realize that they probably should have just stuck to their own design. Well, they didn't have a design yet, because the Les Paul was apparently a reactive move per Leo Fender, the Strat and the Telly. So neither here nor there. They probably realized, well, whatever they're achieving with their guitar, that might sound great, but it doesn't sound good with ours. So apparently they moved it forward a little bit at 68. So and that's what I've said. This template right here, proceed with extreme caution, because this template is based on the very early 1952 location. That P90 is dangerously close to the bridge and probably doesn't sound very good. I mean, it may sound okay. It depends on what you want, but we elected to move this one forward a little bit. So it required that when I did do that route work, that I had the template set up, I did the P90 and the neck location first. Then I took this loose, cleaned everything up, and then repositioned it. And I'll see if I can just put my money where my mouth is and just show it rather than talking about it. Maybe that won't look too weird. Okay, it's at a little bit different location here. This is going to be hard to explain. Okay. Let me just put it where it is. Okay. That location was defined by the scale, defined by the end of the fretboard, and it was machined out. This location right here, you can see, got machined further forward. Okay, so that ought to make sense. So in essence, the two P90s are now about 3/16 of an inch closer than they would have been per the 1952 routing locations. And what are they based on? They would be based on more like the late 60s design from Gibson. Okay, so with that said, let's see, what else should I talk about? Let's see if I need to talk about that anymore. I don't think so. Right now, I've got the depth set per 5/8 of an inch on the front, 1/2 inch back here, but that may change a little bit according to once I actually, I'm almost 100% certain that one's not going to change. But this one back here, because of the whole neck is installed on a taper, a 2.5 degree taper with the body. Well, this bridge pickup back here is considerably higher, and it doesn't require coming out of the body too much. But the way this Lollar is designed, it's just like this sketch right here where it's got the two adjustment screws in the middle, and then it'll have two tall springs up under it. So up under that both pickups will be floating probably 3/8 of an inch off the top of the wood. And I'm probably going to take some of the internal foam in here and just cut that foam and machine it so that there's no cavernous void up under there. I don't know if it will affect the sound, but I just like the idea of there not being any hollows in there, especially since these are single coil. So we'll put the foam in there, and then if you have any sort of issues, Ed, as far as like harmonics and stuff, it might require that you come in with some copper tape or copper paint, and I don't ever do that type stuff. I'm not really qualified to make that determination. So we'll do the best we can, but in the event there was some sort of squealing issue or something, then to be determined at a later date. How's that? Okay. So, but nonetheless, if you want, I'll cut some of the foam and have the foam up under there as well. And got the Kluson tuners in. We'll talk about them in a minute. And I may pull the Lollars out, but probably not, because I like the idea of them being protected in there. I want to talk about this in a minute, but let me set it right there just to make certain that I don't forget to talk about everything here. I've already talked about that. This location is cut. I've covered in the past videos, there's just no way around the Explorer being a component wiring harness, where obviously both pickups are a component, where, in other words, you couldn't just take all the electronics in a bird's nest, put it on a table, and solder up the entire harness and just drop it in. So you'll have the component of the two pickups. I'll call that one component. And then that's really not a component. That's just the pickups. But you definitely have a component where you have the three-way selector, which will have several wires going down to the cavity, controls cavity, and then you can go ahead and wire the complete harness where you've got all four of these. But I found that especially with the Les Paul type configuration, um, the every bit of this, man, I do every bit of that work just in place, where you're literally just sitting here soldering, every bit of that in place, and then so that's one component. I'm gonna call that like the primary controls harness. And then your second component would be the three-way wiring coming down. And then rather than drilling this enormous hole right here all the way up into this body, because you don't have the liberty because you've got a narrow body. I elect to just always stop them. uh, I stop it back here. I only plow deep enough to receive the output jack, the switchcraft. And then I like keeping all this substantial wood intact. And then I just, whatever I cut that with, I allow that drill bit to come on through. And then I got plenty of room for the wiring to come through. So that would be your third component. Or you could kind of look at it as that's your first component, your output jack. Your second component is your primary controls harness, a volume, volume, tone, tone, and then your third component for the wiring harness is the three-way. And then anything custom like a Tessie kill switch or something that you might put right here, or in one Explorer that I built, it was really cool. We put a Tessie kill switch right here at the very end of the pickguard. I had a Tessie. Yeah, I do have. This is actually the one that we put on there. I don't want to do that on this guitar, but we put the kill switch right there, and you know what? If it didn't, it was perfect. It was awesome because you could reach down with your pinky and do your kill switch after you do your hardcore play, and then you just do kill switch work right there. So it worked out really well. But have I built it yet? I think I have. It seems like I did in one guitar where we put a Tessie kill switch right here. I can't remember if I actually did it or we just did really intense design work and almost did it, but I think we did. I can't remember. It's been so long. But that's the reason I machined that out a little bit deeper so that you could either flip and put your turn your three-way 180 degrees and put the switching up here. For some strange reason, if this just is not accessible to you, Ed, then you could do it, and just if you want to, then you could put a Tessie kill switch down on the end, or you could just leave it open and run it like it is. It's just it's all about building a player's guitar. Okay, so with regards to the wiring harness, which I'll be doing every bit of, that's what prompted me to discuss the fact that since there's no way to solder the entire harness, including the pickups, in place and then just dropping it in the body, I like to do really clean, take like a minimalist approach to the actual machine work, and that's what I meant by don't cut the whole guitar in half, because there's an enormous amount of strength that's left in the body just by leaving that all that wood in that location right there. Okay, and then your output jack will cover all that. Okay, so the next thing now I'll start talking about the pickguard. And that's what I was talking about also, that the reason I brought up the fact that the wiring harness is already in 3 different components, if not 4, including the pickups. I want to leave as much wood in this guitar as possible. Even if I went ahead and routed every bit of that out right there for like a clear coat guitar that I stopped. I did this on my very first Explorer replica that I built. I routed all the way up to that point right there and stopped. And then I drilled with a 1/2-inch drill bit into the controls cavity. But then after I did all that machine work, then I came in with some Carina Limbo, which is what the guitar was made out of, and I machined it on the table saw and fit it back in and glued it back in with a Titebond. Well, probably epoxy it in. No, yeah, it probably would have been an epoxy. In other words, I glued the entire thing back, and I left I left a cavity just like that. And then once the pick guard went down, you had the added benefit of you would have never known that it had actually had the body glued back together up under here, and uh, that produces a far better tonal. You know, like you got all this tone that you're in search of. You know, out here. You know, and then if you've got the body cut in half, literally 40% in two. When you cut every bit of that wiring harness channel. I don't know why I'm having trouble thinking today. But when you leave all that solid wood in there, you just get far superior tone, likened to a Les Paul. Okay, so very nice custom guitar, and it's really cool. This is it's no better than the others that I've built, but it's really cool. I've built it enough now that I know that I've really thought through these different operations, and I can't think of a different solution that would be better. The only thing that would be different would be as if I had just left all this maple in, but then come in from the back and basically did exactly what I did on the front, but did it back here, which we've already talked about this, and then put that little controls cover right there somehow or another if we were trying to hide some really unsightly glue up from the wood or something like that. But I just don't think it's necessary. It's really beautiful. And by the time, and also what prompted me to just go ahead and cut through the front, because I tripped up on some of the pictures of the actual Gibson. It was like, good God, I don't even know if they built the bodies out of the same board from the same tree. They probably came from a different country. It was amazing. They looked like a patch quilt. And we're talking actual Gibson manufacturing. They had one of their, and it's funny, it's a good thing I didn't see those pictures before I built this second body, Ed, because there's one I saw online. I think it's a 76 LE or something. Man, you talk about a visible glue line right in the exact location of body A. And they sold it. They put it into production and sold it, and apparently it's still out there. But nonetheless, and it's really cool. I saw this exact design as well, where they did the join right here, and both of them were night and day. I mean, you could literally see it was very obvious that there was a board glued on to that center body. So, but I think the body that we've built here is really beautiful and really tasteful as far as everything going together. And as I had clarified, I think in the last video, yeah, I'm pretty sure I did. If this is the neck came from this location up here in the large board, because the board was 14 and a half inches wide, whatever the width of that large board was that I had. Yeah, I'm almost certain it came from this. Yeah, it did. I know it had to have come from this location right here, because I was maximizing from that point down to there. So this neck would have come from this location right there. And that'll just guarantee that, well, as you see right now, the color is just virtually identical. And hopefully any chatoyancy that shows up will be as well. Okay, so now let's talk about the pick guard just a little bit, or how to make a pick guard. And then we'll go from there. Okay, the cool thing about building, let me check the time, so 29 minutes. The cool thing about having built several of these, this originally was the one for the 25 and a half inch scale Explorer. replica that I built, which very unlikely I will ever be building that guitar again. Not that I wouldn't, it's just that that was a pretty rare situation. But you can see the difference right here where this is actually some good information. Well, the P90 and the humbucker location, everything's different. So that would be your humbucker location on a 24 3/4 inch scale, and you can see where the humbucker pickup the flat, the little flat comes up right here, and it actually stops right where the humbucker flat stops, and then there's a little hook. Well, I guess I am going to have to get one of these P90s out. So I redesigned the Explorer pickguard in order to receive a P90, which is not something that they did in the 50s, and we've already covered that. But so per my design, I stopped the I took the flat, as you can see it. I mean, you can see it right there. I just took it back a little bit further, did a little bit tighter radius, and made certain that right there at the very end, it was pretty much ended perpendicular with that line right there. Therefore, it would really go into the P90 cover and be really beautiful. And when I say snug, it's going to be spot on, because you'll see in a moment, I routed this location right here, well, the template, per actually after having already machined for the P90 locations. That's another reason why I wanted to go ahead and route for the P90s, because I needed the body of the guitar and their exact location to define my pickguard template. So you'll see it's going to be pretty incredible. And that is a 1/2 inch diameter, a 1/4 inch radius for Lollars, and most likely Seymour Duncans and the other aftermarket P90s as well, because that's kind of a standardized cover to my knowledge. And it is smaller. It is smaller in width and in length. So if you had a P90 guitar, you could machine out for humbuckers and conceal everything. But if you had a humbucker equipped guitar, you'll have to glue material back in or epoxy material back in, and then route out the new P90 location. So you could add a humbucker to a P90 location with relative ease, because the ring covers all of the machine work below it. But when you're doing a P90 build, everything is like aircraft specs precise. There's no room for error at all. And the funny thing is, even with the, see, this would have probably a 1/8 inch radius or a 1/4 inch diameter. So when you're building, I wasn't planning on talking about this, but when you're building or when I'm building a replica pickguard for the traditional, I go ahead and I use the various router bits to do the perimeter, but then right there at the very last, I come in with a 1/4 inch diameter flute bit, and I just machine out just the corners. And what does that do? It allows my humbuckers to fit as precise in the pickguard as Ed's P90 Lollar covers will fit into his pickguard. And what does that look like? Looks like a custom built guitar, man. Looks incredible. I'm not trying to sell anybody on doing a humbucker, but I'm just showing you, I already had that template from doing the last 25 1/2 inch scale guitar. So there you have it. And it's incredible because from a player's stand, especially for like jazz, where you're like getting up real close into this location, you're not crashing into these pickups around corners. Although it's funny, after playing the Gibson replicas for quite a while now, I don't even notice that anymore. But I used to always be a Gretsch type player, the Filtertron, where everything was kind of rounded over, and I hated the humbucker just because of that ring. I kept feeling like I was crashing into something, but apparently I got used to it and it doesn't bother me now. But you talk about something that would be an incredible improvement. Is this P90? It's probably going to be very, very low. I'm hoping it's at least right at the threshold. But the only thing that spooks me, Ed, and I forgot to talk to you about this, the design of these guitars. And see, they never did the P90 in the Explorer, and I've seen on a lot of vintage Gibson guitars, the actual P90 is actually below the pick guard, and I'm so hoping that that's not the case with our situation here. So I say that to say this: we'll cross that bridge when we have to, but uh, it'll be a new discovery for us. But I'm just so hoping that after the fretboard goes down, I'm pretty confident that the P90 is obviously going to be sticking up out of the body a little bit, not a lot, but it'll probably be sticking up about 1/8 of an inch. But I got a feeling it's going to be pretty darn flush out here, and it might be that I come in with my black Sharpie, and where there is the parchment, black and parchment, I may, whether I do black, I might actually do cream and just paint that cream in there. We'll see. I just hope it doesn't become an issue. But in a perfect world, we would have something like that. But I don't think it's going to happen at the neck location. But now at the bridge location, yeah, it'll probably be about like that right there. I shouldn't have brought that up because I don't mean to create any sort of potential disappointment. But I'm just letting you know that when you're dealing with P90s, that type of stuff always surfaces because they're so round. They're so rounded over. Okay. Well, anyway, I shouldn't have brought that up because it sounds like I'm complaining about something. But nonetheless, back to rockabilly. With this design right here, since I had the 25.5-inch scale pick guard, all I had to do was just glue in the fillet right there, and then I glued in two maple veneer fillets right here, very, very, very thin. And what was awesome is that brought it perfectly up to, because see the P90, that's why I brought up the fact that the P90 cover is a little bit more narrow. So divide that distance by two. Not that distance, that distance right there by two, and that's what I had to shim under the bottom in order to get that fitment right there on the bottom. I could have just let it go and had a gap under there. And even this company here, that's how they do most of them. They got a pretty serious gap around most of their pickups. They don't try to do as precise of a fitment as that right there, but that's what I'm going to shoot for right now. But if I have to do a little bit of sweetness sanding in here in order to get everything to fit. But because right now the actual distance between these two P90s is identical right here. So once these P90s go in, then they will be as snug in the body or as snug within the pick guard as they are in the body. Okay, ton of information. So I already had the pick guard. So what did I change on the bottom? Absolutely nothing. I didn't have to change anything from here, from this location, all the way around to that location right there. I just had to bring it up a little bit taller right here and bring it in different locations right here and right here. Change it from a 25.5-inch scale to a 24.625-inch scale. So so that is what this is. This would be, if they had have made this guitar in the 50s and put P90s in it, the only thing that would have been different, if they had have gone by the early routing, they would have had the P90 even further back like that, but we brought it forward a little bit. Okay, and one thing I did make a decision, since this is considerably wider from this point here to that point right there, typically you only have one screw in the middle, but I didn't like the idea of sending that to Ed and then run the risk of that thing trying to warp, because see, you don't pick up another. If you only had one screw in the middle, which is per 50 specs, then the next location for support, pickguard support, doesn't pick up until right here and right here. So I deleted the one in the middle, which you can see, there's the one, that's the original location, and I added the two out here. So this would be a 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. So this would be a 9-hole pick guard, whereas the others would have been an eight-hole pick guard. Okay, so rarest guitar in the world. I've never seen it. I'm sure someone's probably built it before, but I do know that Gibson themselves, was that in the 70s or was that in the early 80s? They did the 3 P90 guitar, this exact guitar, and they put 3 P90s in it. So I don't know what they did. I don't think it had a pick guard. I think it was just like a painted top, and it probably had all that routing work from. I guarantee you what it was. It would have been a sandwiched body that had all the machine work internally routed, and then the two pieces were glued together, and then they routed out an access in the back here and an access back here, and then they just fed those component harnesses in from the back. And because I know they didn't have like a pickguard like this on the back, that would have been silly. But I'm almost certain that they just had the 3 P90s on the front, and then it was painted a scene. Because I think one of them, it was really funny. One of them was like a jungle safari camouflage. It was bizarre, like military green. It was really kind of comical. But anyway, and I don't know if they did many others. They might have done some there for a while, because the whole thing about the 80s was, man, everyone was really experimenting with bizarre paint schemes. The only thing I always thought would have been really, really cool is if they had have taken advantage of this incredible uh, amount of footprint up here. And BC Rich, and I think Charvel, I know BC Rich, and oh man, I should have done my research. I think it was Charvel. They were the ones that did the Patrick Nagel girl, and her name is Eva Voorhees. She was a supermodel back in the early 80s, mid 80s, and really, really beautiful girl. But they did her image on the front, and it was per the Patrick Nagel paintings, lithographs, I believe they're called, and where it was very minimalist, but then always had the really beautiful eyes with, a lot of real, all the color was around her eyes. But then I always thought, man, it would be so incredible to do an Explorer with the Eva Voorhees image per Patrick Nagel's, but reverse the image, because in the BC Rich images, the gunslinger is the one they use that on. She's always looking in this direction. But if you reversed it, this body would be an incredible body to do her image here, because everything about the 80s, the girls had big hair. They always had big, wild, boofy hair. So this area up here lends an incredible support for, because like in art, it's called medium and support. Like your medium would be oil or acrylic on canvas. Well, your medium is the oil or acrylic, and then your support would be canvas, but our support being the Explorer body, and the medium being like your printed off, or just painted on, it's like airbrush sprayed on, and then but do the reverse image where the girl is looking in this direction right here. I always thought that would be incredible, even if you did the Floyd Rose, be a killer guitar, man. So just imagine the Patrick Nagel, and not just the girl, Eva Voorhees. They had a lot of different images as well, where they had Pete Thorne has a guitar that I had never seen, where it's the night lights of a city, and there's like all the real straight rectangular images of high-rise buildings in the back, and it was like a landscape of a city. That was a gunslinger as well. So, you know, this guitar, because it already has these uh, parallelogram lines going on, you could definitely get away with doing the whole 80s funky block work. Sky's the limit on this footprint. And I never saw them do that with this guitar. I'm sure some custom builders have done that, but I always thought that would have been an incredible footprint or incredible medium support for the medium of the 80s Patrick Nigel Sexy Girls. Okay, so there you have it. Let's see if we can get this thing apart. The whole idea about taping this to the template is you have to tape the entire perimeter. Guess I haven't done that yet. So you have to tape the entire perimeter in order to hold this floppy material down perfectly flush, so that when you actually come across here with a router bit and you're cutting a 45-degree bevel by hand, it actually looks like it was done with a CNC machine rather than on some floppy situation where you'd only taped it out here on this end and out on this end, and then it might have been bowing up in the middle or something like that. Because when this was machined, you know, I had the large rectangular piece, and this got temporarily glued to the back side or the dull side, and then I drew around it with a no, it didn't matter. I know what I did. I laid it down, drew around it with a pencil so I'd know where to put the tape, because you have to put the tape on here and you have to put tape on here, and then you have to jet glue or CA glue them together and make certain that they're perfectly flush. So, but before I did that, I had to pencil it out and saw it out with a scroll jigsaw in order to get it down to that location. I'm sorry, I take that back. After I temporarily glued it down, then I flipped it over, jigsawed it out. Then I was ready to go to my router and route out anything that I could with a larger bit, and then start making the determination. This is why I have the notes on the back: stop here, and stop here. Because when you're doing the 45-degree bevel on this, you have to stop right here, but then you have to make a straight line bevel right here. So you have to make certain that you don't lose your train of thought and then start running the bevel around this location and that location, because you do that, you'll completely destroy your the whole means by which you have the flat to the flat and then the bevel as an accent in the starting and in the stopping locations. Very complex little pick guard to make, but as long as you really think through the operations and have notes and know when to change over from just a flush cut bit to your bevel bit, but then making certain that this is perfectly flush, and also that your actual template is a very precise, like this is actually aircraft grade birch plywood for like building home-built aircraft. So this is the good stuff. Very expensive and very perfectly straight, stable. Okay, so kind of boring, but nonetheless, when the next time you look at a pick guard and you think, oh man, it's so expensive, it's $70 on eBay. Well, if I'm building a pick guard, this pick guard for a guitar like this, I would be charging probably about $150 to $200 just because. Now that's already included in this build, so that'll give you an idea. When I was putting quotes together, that was part of the total quote price of having to make an actual vintage pick guard or a custom guitar, custom pick guard. So and what is this is going to define every bit of this. It's going to be so cool because this ain't out there. In other words, obviously you couldn't buy this off the shelf. You guys know that, so I'm not telling you anything that you don't know. Okay, what else? Let's see what it looks like. Let me pause, and I don't think this would come clean within just minutes. Yeah, let me pause. Okay, turned out really well. Just staying nice and straight, nice and true. So no warpage or anything there. But this does have a protective film on it, but sometimes it helps. Yeah, I'll go ahead and talk about this because I went ahead and got the screws out. And I'm gonna try to just not allow myself to talk about it too much. But the whole idea is to use the number 3 oval top pick guard screw, and I think Fender uses the exact same thing. But basically, I just buy these from All Parts, and they call it a Gibson pick guard screw, so that's good enough for me. If they're going to go ahead and call it a Gibson pick guard screw, then I need to know how to machine this pick guard in order to receive the actual screw they would have used. And the cool thing about it is I always use the stainless steel, so they're a natural nickel look, but until you live in South Florida, do you know the importance of using stainless steel items like that on your guitar? So, because that crap will definitely rust. But nonetheless, the way I machine this, I've got my jig set up on my drill press. After I machine that, and it's atop the. So we'll talk shop here a little bit. When it was still atop this, see, I have these original. It's slightly over a 1/16 of an inch screw location. I mean, pick guard screw locations, but already drilled through. So I set my drill press up as a pin mounted, it has a wooden deck that I put up there that has a little drill bit sticking up, but only slightly over 1/8 of an inch. So that little drill bit is sticking up, and then all I have to do is find that location, and then once I fall into that location, I now know that my overhead drill press is aligned with the original pin location. That's called pin router work, or just pin top work, and makes it a breeze. So once you align your drill bit station, actual chuck, and the actual chuck itself with that pin sticking up out of the top, then whatever you chuck up in your drill press is now going to cut perfectly on center with the original location. And this might throw you for a loop. You might think, okay, so you start out and you drill with the small location first, but if your drill press has just the slightest bit of movement to it, and not even that, if you use a really thin drill bit and you start coming down like into certain types of material, well, certain parts of that species is going to be like a growth ring or an annular ring. It might catch an annular ring and actually bend the bit over. So I always start with this point bit first, and then so once I put that up there, then I actually do the heavy lifting first, and then that creates the V, and then the drill bit that I use, let me just get one of the little bits. Then when I come in to do the clean out pass, the drill bit actually is forced even into the plastic. If that little chintzy bit wants to travel a little bit, it's forced to align down in the bottom of the V. But it just guarantees that if I do the bevel work first, then I'm sitting there, I'm actually hand beveling each one of these, the depth by hand, and then just turning the bit, the screw over, and just asking myself, does the head fit? You know, does it fit? Is it recessed down well enough, or did I go a little bit too deep on some of them? And usually I go just microscopically too deep on one or two of them, but I always intentionally go a little bit deeper on that one right there, so you don't run the risk of your pinky digging into a bit. But then once you put the see, it's beveled on the bottom edge. Once that goes in, all this pulls down flush, and you know, makes for a finished guitar per 50s Gibson specifications. Okay, so let's do a little bit of experimenting here. Hopefully, well, yeah, I'll go ahead and talk about this. This is pretty incredible. This is really important information for those of you guys who've never installed P90s. If you gotta see these two locations here. To directly to the right of my thumb is the one screw, and then directly to the right of my thumb is the other screw. But in order to try to find those locations, just take the cover and flip it upside down, and then you can come in here with your mechanical pencil and I'll be willing to bet you Ed's guitar that that's exactly where you need to drill those and screw those. Now the question is, could you take a chance and use Ed's Lollar pickup covers as a guide? I'd say I wouldn't do that. But you could. If you had a set of P90 covers that you didn't really care much about, you could just put them in there and then just set it up on your drill press, and you know, take your drill press and go over to that location right there, and then kind of ask yourself, okay, am I where I want to be? And then pull the trigger. But the same thing applies. It might grab and pull and then scar your pickup cover. So why damage your client's extremely valuable item when you can do exactly what I just said? You could take a point tool and come in here and press a point. I'm not going to, but you press a point into that, and then go over to your drill press, identical to the way you did your pick guard. Use your pointing tool to find that. Let's say that's the point right there. Well, your little point tool is not going to lie to you. You're going to feel when you're in the correct location, and then just then kick on the drill and do a slight bevel. And then when you do that little bevel into each of these 4 locations, now guess where your drill bit is going to go. Because you're going to have to drill down into this body, but always make certain that you measure, triple check your depth, and make certain that you don't get overly complacent and drill through the back of a thin body. It'll happen. I almost said it. You know what happens, and it does to the best of us. I haven't done anything like that in a long time, but hopefully we won't do it again. But nonetheless, these screws are pretty darn long. But when you're doing this machine work, always be thinking about what is the finished depth of where this pickup is going to land. Still, I need to sand these. I need to loosen these just a little bit because it's weird. These Lollar pickup covers are a little bit fatter, but nonetheless, whatever this depth is going on right there, hopefully the screw won't be, much longer than that right there, and then I'll only be screwing down into the body maybe 3/8 of an inch or something like that. It doesn't take much once you make contact. This is what I was talking about. I'm just gonna push it down right now. Yeah. I'm actually doing something. Okay, so what I'm doing, going down in it, lifting up a little bit. I'm so hoping that it'll go to about that location right there. That'd be really cool if we could. Look at that. That'd be awesome. Now, hence the reason I've made the statement, the Explorer Replica is going to be the most difficult guitar you've ever built, because that's an enormous amount of geometry. Okay, and I'm so hoping that that P90 will be able to be raised to about that location right there. But I won't know for a fact. I don't think it'll be able to raise that much. One thing's for certain, the screws will be buried, they will be bottomed out in the actual pickup itself. But even if the pick guard is lowered, see, even if the pickup covers, what I meant to say, I think we're going to be okay. That's pretty cool. Yeah, that I'm pretty sure, Ed, we're going to be A-okay. But man, oh man, is she ever going to be fleshed out, streamlined, hardcore guitar? And there's going to be just this very slightest amount of end gap between the end of the fretboard and the beginning of the pickup. Did I say, yeah, the pickup cover? Just a very small amount. So I'll show this, and this will probably be the screenshot. Oh, guess not. Guess I couldn't expect it to hold that much. Well, I won't be able to hold both. Let's see if I can work a miracle here. That'd be pretty cool if that shows up. All right, man. She's a beautiful guitar. Very cool, very rare. Not one I've ever seen. So with that said, let me just put it on the table and I'll see if I can figure out how to get out of this video. I'll lift it up a little bit and might allow that to be the screenshot. I say it all the time, it's not guitar worship, but it's just the relentless pursuit of trying to do extremely high quality work. I'm really hoping that this is actually going to be a little bit higher, and I think it will based on that last image I saw. Two and a half degree pitch allows, see, if you had a 3-degree pitch, this bridge pickup is going to be considerably higher than the neck pickup. If you have a 1-degree pitch and this thing is higher out of the body, then both of these pickups are going to be very similar to their height. So pitch and height, everything is interdependent on everything. Everything is interdependent. When I say everything, everything. So that's kind of what the guitar will look like. I'll just mock it up real quickly, but we're getting close to it right there. And see, this is what I love about the 58 pick guard. It just comes dangerously close to the very edge of the ABR1, and that's so cool how they cut it so close. Okay, so with that said, I'll end the video right there. And in the next video, I'll have a lot more work done. I'm getting ready to glue the maple down atop the headstock face, even though I really want to paint it black, but we might get a really incredible surprise. This curly veneer maple might be really beautiful, might be pretty incredible. So the cool thing about this guitar, you can always paint it or you can always leave it natural. But as far as everything goes right now, I want to stick to the 1956 specs of the Goldtop guitar, which would have had the trapezoid inlays, the rosewood, the binding on the fretboard, the binding on the body, gold top, etc., nickel hardware. So we're not changing any gears, and we're putting things in, historically accurate locations, but nonetheless, it's still a custom guitar that you could, do differently, or have a different pick guard. We've talked about that just enough to talk about it, but I just found that because the mahogany was so beautiful on the back, I didn't want to keep the top solid just so that there was a possibility that you could run it without a pick guard. Even though, I'm looking at that, it's incredibly cool. It's beautiful, but it's cool. But just like all the others that I've built, this pick guard really defines this design, and it just does. Okay, so I appreciate you guys dropping in. And as always, I'll see you in the next video. Going once, going twice. I'll talk about the Cluson tuners in the next video, because then we'll be talking about the headstock and stuff like that. But otherwise, as I say, I'm just going to stop talking. Thanks, guys. I'll see you in the next video.